The moment Karen ripped my therapy dog's permit in half, I knew my quiet suburban life was over. What she didn't know was that I'm the guy who decides which airports get tactical response teams. "Excuse me," a voice like a cheese grater on Sunburn called from behind me. "Dogs are expressly forbidden in Whispering Pines Estates." I turned to see a woman with the kind of haircut that demands to speak to managers professionally. This was my first day moving in, and Delta, my golden retriever, was calmly sitting by my side as the movers unloaded the truck. He wasn't even barking, just existing, which apparently was crime enough. "Hi there, I'm Marcus, just moved in at 423. This is Delta, my therapy dog." "I'm Karen Wilkins, HOA president." She managed to make president sound like empress. "We don't make exceptions." "Actually, by federal law," I began, reaching for Delta's documentation in my pocket. She snatched the papers from my hand. "I've heard every excuse. Do you know how many people suddenly need therapy when they want to break the rules?" Before I could respond, she ripped the official documents in half. "No, dogs allowed—" Delta whimpered softly. I felt my pulse quicken as the airport flashbacks threatened to start again. The smell of jet fuel, the screams, the metal detector going crazy as I— "Ma'am, you might want to reconsider that," I said, forcing myself back to the present. "Or what?" Karen crossed her arms. "You'll call the manager?" "No," I said quietly, "but I do have the transportation secretary on speed dial." She rolled her eyes and walked away, dropping my torn documentation on the ground like confetti. I took a deep breath and scratched Delta behind the ears. "It's okay, boy. We've handled worse than suburban dictators." 3 months ago, I was coordinating a counter-terrorism response at Dulles International. Now I was picking up pieces of my therapy dog's paperwork from my new front lawn. Life comes at you fast. "So, you're telling me you're the guy who can shut down O'Hare with a phone call?" Mike the contractor whistled as he installed my security system the next day. "That's not exactly what I do," I said, unpacking a box labeled classified that just contained my coffee mugs. "But close enough." Mike nodded sagely. "That's why you want the reinforced door frames and the panic room, huh?" "The panic room is for the PTSD episodes," I corrected him. "The reinforced doors are because I've made enemies in several terrorist organizations." "Cool, cool," Mike said, drilling another hole. "My last client just wanted crown molding. This is way more interesting." Delta barked once at the window. "Someone's coming," I said, moving to check. Mike raised an eyebrow. "How'd you know that?" "That's his stranger approaching bark. I have his signals memorized." "Man, that's some CIA-level stuff right there." "TSA, not CIA," I corrected automatically. "Very different budgets." A woman in her 30s with curly hair and a plate of cookies stood on my porch. Unlike Karen's militant posture, this woman seemed genuinely friendly. "Hi, I'm Lisa from across the street," she said when I opened the door. "Welcome to the neighborhood." She handed me the cookies, then spotted Delta. Her eyes widened. "Oh, you have a dog." "He's a therapy dog," I said, tensing for another confrontation. "He's gorgeous," Lisa whispered, kneeling to let Delta sniff her hand. "But you might want to keep him low profile. Karen's on the warpath about pets. She fined the Gonzalez family $1,500 last year for harboring a parakeet." "A parakeet?" "Exotic animals clause. Look, I'm breaking ranks telling you this, but Karen's reign of terror has gone on long enough. The previous owner of your house moved because she issued him 17 violations in 1 month for his aggressive landscaping." So, aggressive landscaping. "He planted tulips instead of daffodils. It was in the bylaws, apparently." Lisa looked over her shoulder. "Just watch out. She has eyes everywhere." After Lisa left, I found a violation notice slipped under my door. $500 fine for an unauthorized animal on the premises. That didn't take long. What do you think, Delta? Should we pay the fine or fight the power? Delta tilted his head. Yeah, I thought so too. The monthly HOA meeting was held in the community center, a beige building that matched the beige personalities Karen seemed to prefer. I sat in the back, observing. Delta lay at my feet, wearing his therapy vest despite Karen's glares. Item 4, Karen announced. The Rodriguez family at 512 Maple has installed a basketball hoop in their driveway. A tired-looking man stood up. My kids need exercise, and the community court is always booked. The architectural guidelines clearly state that sports equipment must be removable and stored out of sight when not in use, Karen said, not looking up from her notes. It is removable. Your request is denied, and you have 14 days to remove it before fines begin. Item 5. For an hour, I watched Karen shoot down reasonable requests with the cold efficiency of someone who'd found their calling in making others miserable. A Christmas light extension. Denied. A fence height variance for a family with an escape artist toddler. Denied. A little free library. Technically a commercial enterprise. Denied. After the meeting, I approached Karen with my most diplomatic security briefing smile. Miss Wilkins, I'd like to discuss my therapy dog documentation that you destroyed yesterday. I've issued the violation notice. You can appeal in writing. I'm afraid you don't understand. Delta is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act. Therapy animals are— Save it for the appeals committee, she said, closing her binder with a snap. Which, coincidentally, I chair. I see. And when does this committee meet? When necessary. She offered a smile that could freeze lava. Which is rarely. As I walked home with Delta, my phone buzzed with a text from my boss. How's suburban life treating you? Bored yet? I thought about how to respond. After the incident, when 3 men with improvised explosives tried to breach security at Dulles, my therapist had strongly suggested a less stressful environment. What I didn't expect was finding a new battleground with different kinds of terrorists. Settling in, I texted back. Local governance issues to navigate. Don't overthink it, Marcus. That's what got you in trouble last time. Easy for him to say. He hadn't seen a man detonate himself at checkpoint B. Hadn't been the one who spotted the second device a second too late. Delta nudged my hand with his nose, bringing me back from the edge of a flashback. Good boy. Sir, we received a complaint about an unauthorized dog in the neighborhood, Officer Rodriguez said, approaching cautiously as Delta and I finished our evening walk. His hand wasn't on his weapon, which I appreciated. Let me guess, I sighed. Karen Wilkins called? The officer's professional expression cracked slightly. I'm not at liberty to share who made the complaint. But it was Karen, a ghost of a smile. Sir, I just need to see documentation for your service animal. Therapy dog, I corrected. And I had documentation until Miss Wilkins destroyed it. I have copies inside. Rodriguez shone his flashlight on Delta's vest. Therapy dog, reflected back in bright letters. I deal with airport security for a living, officer. I know the relevant laws. UTSA? He asked, suddenly interested. Above that, I'm the Federal Aviation Security Chief for the Mid-Atlantic region. His eyebrows shot up. No kidding. My brother works air marshal service out of Dulles. Tom Rodriguez? Good man. Saved my ass during the Istanbul incident. The officer grinned. Small world. Look, get me those copies when convenient. And, off the record, Karen's called about every violation in this neighborhood for 3 years. Why does everyone put up with it? Most people don't have the time or energy to fight. Plus, she's got dirt on half the board members. He shrugged. Anyway, I'll mark this call as resolved. I appreciate that, officer. Delta wagged his tail in agreement. The next week, I found myself hosting an impromptu gathering of HOA victims in my living room. It hadn't been planned. Lisa had introduced me to Judge Reynolds, whose garden gnomes had been confiscated as unauthorized lawn ornaments. He'd brought along Sadie, a single mom whose Christmas lights had been deemed excessive, despite being a single strand. Then came Walter, a Vietnam vet whose flag display was called Unauthorized External Decor. She took my gnomes. My dead wife collected those, Judge Reynolds said, swirling his scotch. 30 years on the bench, and I've never seen someone abuse power like this. Delta moved from person to person, offering therapeutic head nudges. Everyone except Karen seemed to love him. The thing is, said Sadie, nobody wants to be the one to stand up to her. She threatened to publish my late HOA payments in the community newsletter when I objected to her fining me for my kids' chalk drawings on our own driveway. It's technically defacement of shared visual space, Walter said in a mocking tone. I swear she makes this shit up. I took a sip of my water. Has anyone ever challenged her formally? The Jenkins tried last year, Lisa said. Suddenly their mail kept getting misdelivered. Their garbage didn't get picked up. Their car got towed from their own driveway because it was abandoned after being parked for more than 48 hours. That sounds like harassment, I noted. It is, Judge Reynolds agreed. But it's all just petty enough, just legal enough that it's hard to fight. Plus, Walter added, it's not exactly life and death. It's just constant annoyance. I nodded, understanding. In my world, threats were clear, tangible. Here, the terrorism was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Maybe it's time someone stood up to her, I said. Someone with nothing to lose and experience dealing with hostile situations. Everyone looked at me. Delta wagged his tail. You don't know what you're getting into, Lisa warned. Karen plays dirty. So do international terrorist cells, I said, and they're usually better armed. The next day, I noticed a small camera pointed at my front door from Karen's second-floor window. Classic intimidation technique, but amateur hour compared to what I'd dealt with. I waved directly at it while taking Delta out for his morning walk. Later, I was doing my physical therapy exercises at the community pool when Karen appeared, clipboard in hand like a medieval weapon. This pool is reserved for the Wilson baby shower today, she announced, loud enough for the 3 elderly swimmers to hear. There's no reservation sign, I said, continuing my leg stretches. The pool was helping with the shrapnel wounds that still ached when it rained. Karen tapped her clipboard. It's in the system. Everyone needs to leave immediately. Mrs. Gonzalez, 82, and Spry paddled over. Karen, I checked yesterday. No reservations until the weekend. The schedule changed, Karen said with the confidence of someone used to not being questioned. I sent an email. At what time? I asked innocently. What? The email. When did you send it? She frowned. 7 this morning. I pulled my waterproof phone from my pocket. Interesting. The HOA bylaws, which I've memorized, require 48 hours notice for common area reservations. Karen's face reddened. There are exceptions for board members. Section 5, paragraph 3 specifically states there are no exceptions. I have an eidetic memory. Comes in handy for remembering security protocols and petty tyrannies. The elderly swimmers tried not to laugh. Karen leaned in, voice low but intense. You think you're so smart. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I smiled pleasantly. Actually, I do extensive background checks for a living, so I know exactly who I'm dealing with, Karen, including that noise violation in Scottsdale in 2016. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. The violations against me escalated after that. Improper trash can placement, by 3 inches, unauthorized security equipment, my professional-grade systems, noise complaints about Delta, who rarely barked. Mike came back to install some additional security features. "Dude, there's someone in your bushes," he said, looking out the window. I checked the security feed on my tablet. "That's Karen. She's documenting my unauthorized wind chimes." "Should we call the cops?" "No need. I've got a better idea." That night, I installed motion-activated sprinklers in my yard. My security cameras caught Karen's surprised shriek at 6:30 the next morning when she tried to measure the height of my grass. The footage went to an encrypted cloud server I labeled Exhibit A. I was ready for her next move. What I wasn't prepared for was how quickly she escalated. An emergency HOA meeting was called. The topic? Security threats in our community, subtle. "You need backup?" Officer Rodriguez texted me when he heard. "My shift ends at 7. "I've got this," I replied, "but thanks for the offer." "Don't underestimate her," he warned. "She got the police chief's wife a parking ticket once, at church." The meeting room was packed when I arrived with Delta. Every chair was filled, with people standing along the walls. I took a spot in the back, making mental notes of exits and vantage points, old habits. Karen stood at the podium, remote in hand, projector ready. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We have an urgent security situation that requires immediate attention." She clicked to her first slide, a grainy photo of my house. As many of you know, a new resident has moved into 423 Oakwood. What you may not know is the security risk he presents. Next slide. Me walking Delta. He has repeatedly violated our no pets policy, claiming his dog is for therapy. She made air quotes. Next slide. A close-up of my security cameras. He has installed unauthorized surveillance equipment throughout his property, potentially infringing on neighbors' privacy. She continued through a series of slides showing various violations, each more stretched than the last. My grass half an inch too tall. My mailbox allegedly not matching neighborhood specifications. The motion-activated sprinklers labeled as water weaponry. "But most concerning," Karen said, voice dropping dramatically, "is what I've discovered about his employment." She clicked to a blurry photo of me entering my home with my secure briefcase. Red circles and arrows pointed to it, like a conspiracy theorist's masterpiece. "He claims to work in airport security, but I have reason to believe there's more to the story. Why would an airport security guard need reinforced doors? Why would he need private security cameras? Why would he need," dramatic pause, "a panic room?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I remained silent, watching the show. "As you can see," she concluded, "this individual has installed unauthorized surveillance equipment, repeatedly violated our pet policies, and frankly, I don't think he's being truthful about his employment." The room had gotten uncomfortably warm, with 50 neighbors crammed in. Delta sat perfectly beside my chair, his therapy dog vest almost glowing under the fluorescent lights. "All those in favor of beginning eviction proceedings." "Point of order," I said, standing. It was the first time I'd spoken during the hour-long character assassination. Karen glared. "The floor isn't open for comments." "Actually," said Mrs. Gonzalez from the back, "bylaws require an open comment period before any vote. Section 8, paragraph 4. Karen's knuckles whitened around her gavel. "Fine. You have 2 minutes." I walked to the front, Delta at my heel. From my pocket, I produced my government ID and handed it to Mr. Patel in the front row. "My name is Marcus Williams. I am the Federal Aviation Security Chief for the Mid-Atlantic region, appointed by the Secretary of Transportation and confirmed by the Senate Transportation Committee. Mr. Patel's eyes widened as he examined my credentials, then passed them to his wife. My job includes coordinating security protocols for 17 major airports and overseeing a counterterrorism budget of $340 million annually. I clicked to the next slide in Karen's presentation, one she hadn't prepared. It showed her climbing my back fence last Tuesday. This is footage from my home security system, which is not only authorized but required by my agency due to the sensitive nature of my work. Murmurs spread through the room. Karen's face had achieved a shade of red I'd previously only seen in sunset simulations. Delta is my therapy dog, prescribed after I led the response team during the 2022 airport incident that some of you may have seen on the news, the one that earned me a commendation from the president. I turned to Karen. The documentation you destroyed was federal government property. Destroying it was, technically, a federal offense. The room went silent. But I'm not interested in pressing charges. I'm interested in living peacefully in a community that follows its own rules, including the Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, both of which protect my right to have Delta. Karen finally found her voice. You can't intimidate us with government doublespeak. I know my rights. As do I replied calmly. Including the fact that this HOA has been selectively enforcing rules in a way that has created a pattern of harassment. I've documented 47 instances in the 3 months I've lived here. I distributed a folder to the board members. This includes statements from 12 neighbors, photographs of similar violations that weren't cited, and a legal analysis prepared by my friend at the Justice Department. Karen stood, shaking. This is an opportunity, I finished for her. To start over. To create an HOA that serves the community instead of terrorizing it. I looked around the room. All those in favor of reviewing the HOA bylaws and establishing an ethics committee, please raise your hands. Every hand went up except Karen's. Motion carried, Judge Reynolds said, a smile creeping across his face for what I assumed was the first time in years. The transformation of Whispering Pines Estates didn't happen overnight. Karen didn't suddenly become a benevolent ruler, but with the newly established ethics committee, which I reluctantly joined, her power was checked. The revised bylaws included clear protection for service and therapy animals, reasonable guidelines for holiday decorations, and, my personal favorite, a presumption of good faith clause that required the HOA to assume residents were trying to comply rather than deliberately breaking rules. A month after the showdown, we organized Delta's Day at the community park, inviting service and therapy animals from across the county. Officer Rodriguez brought his K-9 unit for a demonstration, and local trainers offered free workshops. Karen didn't attend, but I spotted her watching from her window. Later that week, I was installing a new security system for the community center, a donation from my agency's community outreach program, when Karen approached. "Mr. Williams," she said stiffly. "Miss Wilkins," I nodded. "The board reviewed your proposal for the Neighborhood Watch program. And? It's been approved. Your expertise will be valuable." I finished connecting a wire. "Thank you." She lingered, which was unusual. Karen wasn't one for small talk. "Is there something else?" I asked. She hesitated. "I may have been hasty in my assessment of your dog." Coming from Karen, this was practically a tearful apology. "Delta's a good judge of character," I said. "He's never held a grudge." As if on cue, Delta trotted over and sat politely in front of Karen. She looked around to ensure no one was watching, then briefly patted his head. "My sister's son has anxiety attacks. The doctor suggested a therapy animal." I nodded. "Delta and I can recommend some excellent programs." "I wasn't asking for..." I know, but neighbors help neighbors. That's what functioning communities do. She gave a curt nod and walked away. But without the militant posture I'd come to associate with her. 6 months later, I sat on my front lawn with Delta, watching the neighborhood kids play across the street. No violation notices, no cameras pointed at my house, no surprise inspections. Mike the contractor waved as he drove by, slowing down. "Hey, Mr. Security Man, how's the panic room working out?" "Haven't needed it in weeks," I called back. It was true, the nightmares had subsided. Delta's ears perked up as a familiar figure walked hesitantly toward us, Karen clutching a folder instead of her usual clipboard. "Mr. Williams," she said stiffly, "the Architectural Committee has reviewed your application." I braced myself. Some habits die hard. She handed me the folder. "Your request for the fence extension has been approved." "Thank you," I said, genuinely surprised. Karen looked at Delta, then back at me. "The committee also thought, well, that perhaps we should establish a dog park in the empty lot on Maple, for all residents." I tried not to look shocked. "That's actually a great idea." She nodded curtly, turned to leave, then paused. My nephew was diagnosed with anxiety. His doctor suggested a therapy dog. Understanding dawned. Delta and I know a great training program. "I'm not asking for—" "I know, but neighbors help neighbors, right? Isn't that what HOAs are supposed to be about?" For the first time, Karen offered something approximating a smile. "I suppose they are." As she walked away, Delta rested his head on my knee. "Well, buddy," I said, scratching behind his ears, "looks like we're finally home." From inside, my secure line rang. Probably another airport crisis brewing somewhere. But for once, I let it go to voicemail. Some security issues had already been handled. The funny thing about security is that it isn't just about locks and cameras and checkpoints. Sometimes it's about building a community where people look out for each other. Sometimes it's about knowing you belong somewhere. Delta woofed softly in agreement. After years of watching for threats, maybe we'd finally found peace in the least likely place, a neighborhood with a once tyrannical HOA president who was learning that rules work better when they protect people instead of controlling them. I had faced down international terrorists, coordinated responses to national security threats, and survived an explosion that left both physical and mental scars. But creating change in Whispering Pines Estates, that might have been my finest achievement yet. And Delta, the cause of it all, just wagged his tail, blissfully unaware that he'd been the catalyst for a suburban revolution. Good boy indeed.